All right, and we are live. Yes, we are a little bit early, and that is okay. We'll just, shoot the shit for a little bit as we wait for those people who might be jumping on in a few minutes to join the stream. This is my guest. He's been commenting in the chat for a while under another name. That's his business, not for mine to share. We got Spicy P,
Yep.
and he actually joined the Discord server so he could join the stream. If anyone wants to join the stream or any other stream in the future, I usually post the link in the Discord. So check the description below, hit that Discord link, join us in our discussion group, our community. The Carnal lights are alive and well, and I hope to see you there. So we can hopefully have some discussions, maybe share your point of view on the channel. But today we are discussing the absolute shit show of what looks like Trump to be giving up, or that's at least what it's being painted to look like.
Yeah.
Um, we have the tweet where, well, not the tweet. We had a statement yesterday from the Trump team, essentially disavowing Sidney Powell. Very disappointing. Then we have today where I believe the Michigan Commission certified the election results, which secures those votes for Biden. And Trump uh, essentially allowing Biden's transition team to come in and begin their process, which all around just looks like a very bad day for any Trump supporter who looks into a bleak, dark future where your vote doesn't mean shit. And that's
Yeah.
where we're at. That's essentially where we're at. We are looking at a future where your vote doesn't mean a damn thing, where judges can look at uh, massive amounts of affidavits and circumstantial testimony and essentially say, nope, it's all good, nothing funny here. Uh, the vote is not sacred enough to make sure that it is valid or real, and that's just the way that it goes. And you have to remember, this moment in time is not the only thing that's real. The past did happen. The Everything that led up to these events did still happen. We watched a Biden presidency who was lackluster to say the least. We have an incumbent president who had the most bombastic and, shall we say, rallying, enthusiastic base, where we had a ton of enthusiasm, large crowds, stadiums filled. Um, Whereas the guy who won, the guy who we're told that secured this victory in 2020, couldn't fill a fucking parking lot.
Well, he did. He
And then,
just filled it with a bunch of cars honking horns.
yes, 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 yes. I mean those ridiculous pictures, those ridiculous scenes where you have like 6 to 9 people sparsed out with these ridiculous circles with chairs in the middle of the circle, and I'm sitting here going, but you're fooling no one. If you could fill those gaps with actual bodies, you would do it.
Yeah.
The only reason you're doing this performance is because you can't. And they fooled no one. They disavowed says, yeah, they were all Jeeps. Um, which is an interesting factoid, but yes, they were all Jeeps. Sources claim that they were all Jeeps. And then we get to election night. We get to election night where everyone goes to bed. And if you watch Steven Crowder's stream like I did, everyone thought Trump had this in the bag. Like, if everything was going along the way that the numbers were projected to go, and it looked like Trump had it in the bag. It was a secure Trump victory. And then everyone went to sleep, including Steven Crowder, and they stayed up till the wee hours of the morning. And almost overnight, you had a literal jump in the votes, 100% for Joe Biden in these districts, and no one, everyone's pretending it didn't happen. Like all of this is normal. Like all of this is acceptable. And what is it? What are Americans supposed to think about this alternate timeline, so to speak? Once more,
This is some Harry Turtledove stuff for sure.
Yeah, like okay. So here we have I don't, what do I call this? Like a deeply demoralizing moment. And we have to consider our options. I watched the Laura Ingraham video, and she's essentially pleading with Trump to not forsake the Republicans. And I'm thinking to myself, he doesn't owe any of you fuck all.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're begging him to be your godsend when, you didn't do the same. And that's the thing I liked about Trump is he is the American prince. He ruled through Machiavellian principle. And I don't see him giving anything he doesn't have to. And I don't know why they think that that he's going to be helping the Republicans any more than he has to. I mean, sure, he should help the Republicans in Georgia maintain their seats. That should absolutely happen. So the reason I wanted to do this stream is to not only say what's happening and what's happened, but what are the options here? Like, what are the possibilities from this point? Because we have a clear. It looks like Biden's pretty much got it in the bag, barring a miracle, and I mean a literal miracle.
Yeah.
So we can talk about the miraculous option. We can talk about the miraculous option of somehow a court, a case or two gets to the Supreme Court and they're able to rule on it and do whatever that could possibly entail. And then we need to discuss all of the other options. So, what is your
real quick? I just got some news that somebody might be trying to break into my place out back.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, stand by as someone finds out after fucking around. Go ahead and handle that, sir.
I hope they don't find out, but I'll be right back.
All right.
Holy shit.
Breaking news. We have a break-in on Carnal stream. Please stand by as some poor soul decides to find out whether or not he gets to maintain his life. I'm just gonna say that I am proud of your boy. Defend that property, sir. Oh, mercy. Breaking news indeed. Unfortunately, this is not 911. We do not do emergency responses. This is out of my jurisdiction. He is not a neighbor. And you know what? Disavowed. Go ahead and come on. Go ahead, come on in, Disavowed. This will be lovely. So, as Disavowed's coming on in, and we have Spicy P dealing some justice. Hopefully not.
There ain't nobody back there.
Oh, thank God. No one got to find out, did they?
Hang on, my wife is giving me the rundown.
Okay. As he receives orders from his better half, I'm presuming. We're gonna wait for Disavowed to come on in, and here we are, Bebo the Great.
People
How's it going, Bebo?
going, brother. How about you?
It's going. I take it you've had your pulse on these recent shenanigans, these
Yeah,
uh these depressing moments.
sort of went the way I expected, actually.
Oh my gosh.
You you remember we talked and I said I didn't, I'm a pessimist. I didn't think he was gonna pull it out. You know.
Well, we do have a comment from chat. I'm seriously worried. I don't want Biden in. He's going to murder us all. Now, Todd, I'm going to give you a tiny, tiny white pill. Believe it or not,
I'm back.
I did have. Well, welcome back, Spicy P. Welcome to our other guest, Bebo the Great. I'm talking to chat. Todd had a concern about Biden murdering us all. And my response to that is, the Million MAGA March was a success. It was a rousing success. It sent a message to the left. And that now we're having massive protests against the lockdowns after the election. And I think they're getting the message that we're not going to take it lying down anymore. And I do see that in a world where conservatives realize that they don't have a political voice, that they're going to start turning to other means, and it's not going to be it's it's not it if it gets to the point of violence, it's not going to be the Antifa rabid um, the rabid Antifa type of violence. This is going to be right wing conservative violence, and it's going to be effective violence. As one of the other commenters on my channel have said, um, all they have is their lies, and the right seems to have a monopoly on force. And it would that be politicide? I honestly don't know. I honestly cannot tell if it would be political death for the right to assert themselves militarily. I cannot say I don't know if they would get people joining their ranks, or if the media is loud enough to decry them and to lie on them. Uh, Politicide for the left, however, I'm not certain. If you could clarify that. Oh, he's going to murder us all in the terms of politicide, is what you might be saying there. N- no, I don't think Biden and the left had the power to kill the America First movement. I think they tried. I think they've sincerely given their best efforts to kill America First, or the MAGA movement, and I think they failed. And I think robbing the election is the absolute best they could do, and it was something they felt like they had to do.
Well,
So
okay, keep this in mind. So, 2016, when Trump was running, no one on earth, well, speaking from the politicians aspect and from the media, nobody expected Trump to win. They looked at him as a joke. And when he got elected, they were surprised that this actually happened. So
yeah,
this year, Biden runs. These numbers, none of them add up. I don't know
no,
how old geriatric dude got as many votes as he did, more than Obama did. Seems insane to me, but okay, whatever. What I'm thinking
yeah,
happened is in 2016 uh, and past elections, I can't speak beyond those, but 2016, it would not surprise me if Obama was, if Obama and whoever the hell else helped Hillary out with trying to steal that election, but they didn't steal it by enough. That's why we saw the bump that we did for this election. They had to make up
Yes.
numbers out of nowhere.
Yeah, and that's it. I believe Sidney Powell. I believe her 100% when she says that the software um, was geared to compute it in such a way so that the lead would seem close, but that Biden would win. But there were so many Trump supporters that it broke the algorithm, and they had to inject votes. I believe that 100%. And when I take that model and I take that reality, it it matches every election that I've seen pretty much since Obama.
To be honest, I don't think they want to kill us. Maybe enslave us with like 70, 80, 90% tax rates, something like that.
I think they want to bring us in line with the rest of the world from the European Union aspect, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Well, they want globalization.
Yeah.
And General Mattis came out with an op-ed today, opinion piece, where he stated basically that he believes that the first thing that Biden should do on foreign policy is take the American first equation out of the foreign policy, which basically I don't know why that even needs to be said. Like Biden wasn't going to do that.
Oh, no. Make no mistake. I'm going to make a prediction. I hope to God that I'm wrong. The first thing that's going to go as soon as Biden is in the Oval Office is the Middle East peace deals are done. They're not going to be taken up. They're going to be thrown in the garbage. We're going to have a coup in Saudi Arabia. Mark my words, we are going to have another coup in Saudi Arabia. It's going to be violent. It's going to be the CIA reaggressing their authority in the Middle East through another corrupt prince, which Trump actually managed to get most of them out. He exposed the corruption in Saudi Arabia. He promoted a prince that was able to give their people fantastic trade deals and military aid to maintain their peace and the integrity of their nation. I see that going to be completely overturned. We're going to see violence erupt in Saudi Arabia, no doubt. Um, China's going to run amok with us. That's going to be obvious. Um, but good God, like, and yeah, I I'm disappointed in old James. James Mattis has disappointed me on this front. He was supposed to be
Yeah,
the mad dog.
it seems personal to me.
It is personal. He wanted troops in the Middle East to maintain the to maintain the presence of the industrial military complex, and Trump wasn't having it. He, I don't know if you all remember this, but Trump did a speech where he essentially said they asked me that they told me that it would take 2 years or 18 months to get the Middle East cleaned up. And so over, I think it was Christmas break,
Dude,
he
I
act,
gotta ask one question, man. What is this bacon cheeseburger joke in your feed all the time?
oh, the bacon cheeseburger is bacon cheeseburgers is a metric of freedom because Muslims can't eat bacon.
All right.
Well, they can as long as they don't know it's bacon.
Well, don't tell them. No. You need to tell them to test whether or not they're free or not.
Just,
And it's
just
not
tell just tell them there's no pork and pepperoni. They'll eat it.
actually that is a thing that allows them to eat it. If they actually don't know that it has it in there, it's halal and whatnot.
Really?
Yeah, if you don't know that,
Oh.
if they don't know that, like when I was in Afghanistan, we used to give the locals MREs, and command told us we had to make sure if we did that, you can't give them anything with pork in it. Well, hell, sometimes a bunch of them would just come up and just start grabbing straight out of the box, and you can't go, this one doesn't have pork in it. Oh, wait, this one does. Put it off to the side. Then they get
Yeah, they come herd you.
it's not just that. They would get upset thinking that you're just handing them the bad stuff. No, if you guys want egg and cheese omelet, you have to order those. Those are sold elsewhere.
Wow. All right, so that is that's
Bacon
the bacon
cheeseburger.
cheeseburger running joke. So where the hell were we?
We
Oh
were
yes,
on Mattis.
on Mattis. Yeah, I'm sorry. Mattis is on the same level with me as Mitt Romney. Like I'm pissed. Like you're not authentically of America first anymore. And if you're not America first, like what the hell are you doing? Like
Well, it's a little okay. So a little more into that. The reason why Mattis and Trump broke apart was they are a lot alike, and those two came to heads a lot, and they just rub each other the wrong way. If Trump and Mattis could put aside their personal differences, they would get along just fine. But the other part of the issue with the Middle East in general, the reason why we were still over there, minus the lies that just came out, the honest truth that just came out that they were keeping it secret from Trump that we weren't really bringing the military back.
yeah,
It's think about all the thousands of U.S. soldiers that have died over there, and a general like Mad Dog Mattis, he really does give a shit about the soldiers. Whereas the politicians, while they say it, I don't believe it at all. I mean, when was the last time? I can't think of a politician that served in the military that acted military other than Dan Crenshaw. And even Dan Crenshaw, he's, from last I heard, this may have changed. Dan Crenshaw did support the red flag laws, but
yeah,
again, that may have changed since the last time I heard that one.
Who
it
who is
hasn't.
our last president that was even in the military? Bush Senior?
Yes, actually, Bush Sr. was a pilot,
Eh.
and his plane, he was out on a training flight, and his plane took a nosedive. I forget what error it was. I can't remember if it was mechanical error, but it definitely wasn't pilot error, or else we'd heard about that one.
Eh.
And
So
he
he is the last one that served though in the military.
I think so. Bush Jr.
Didn't
There was,
serve, I don't think.
there was a story that he was in a Air National Guard unit and was ordered to deploy and never did. But I've heard that one discounted. I can't speak to that.
Well, I think we're due for a military guy.
Yeah, and I think Trump could have filled the slot had they given him a fair shake and did like the rest of us when Obama got elected and just went, well, we'll endure this for 4 to 8 years. But no, that's not the way they play.
No. So we're going to go on the assumption that our votes no longer mean shit, and Biden's going to get into the presidency. What then? in all sincerity, like I need with my fellow Americans or those of like mind to tell me, or at least discuss in some detail, what the fuck are we supposed to do now? um, or what would you like to see Trump do if he is out of office? Like what is how do we make lemonade out of those sour grapes?
Well, to throw a wrench in the works, I would definitely pardon Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, that one
Yeah,
dude specialist. He was an E4, ended up going to jail for espionage, went trans. I
Yeah.
forget his name, but pardon him too, because all three of them, if you pardon them, the information that they collected while they were committing their acts, it's no longer a problem. You can air that shit out in the open. And for love of God, I cannot think of anybody that has died because of the Edward Snowden leaks.
oh,
Yeah.
they claim that he endangered CIA agents, and now let's let let's take a look at those CIA agents. let's try to understand exactly who these people were, how they voted, and what they've done, during the Trump administration. Because right now, the CIA needs to be disbanded. The FBI too. Like, if Edward Snowden inadvertently put in danger the CIA assets, I no longer consider that to be a threat against America as a nation. I think we're now realizing that the CIA is a massive secret combination that needs a lot of sunlight.
Yeah.
So exonerate them and then bury these two decrepit institutions. Absolutely.
Well, I'm a two-state solution guy, man. I'm done with it. I think it's getting boring to me at this point. Like, let's just have a divorce and divvy up the spoils.
Well, that
No,
brings
no,
up
no.
the food.
I'm sorry that I don't see a two-state solution. You got to understand something about communists and socialists that are look. Even though Biden says he doesn't support them, he's their useful idiot,
Yeah.
Oh,
and they're going to subvert a Biden presidency if they're successful to achieve those ends. Now you can bullshit about the House and how we still have the Senate. I don't give a shit. After this election, after this debacle, after our government officials and our media let this shit go down, our elections don't mean fuck all anymore. So
I
I'm just going to assume that evil is going to get in power. I'm
yeah.
just going to. It is a foregone conclusion that the
Oh,
people we have.
I'll black pill you further. I think they're going to end up with a 50-50 tie in the Senate, and I think the breaking vote's going to be the vice president, which will
Oh
be
yeah,
Carmela. So I think they're going to have all three branches.
yeah. They're going to get all three branches, and it's. The question is, what recourse do the people have in response, and where do we put our efforts? Where do we put our activism? Insurrection Act, or we're all dead. No, no, no. Voter fraud, destruction, or we're already dead.
Dude,
Like
they don't want to kill us. We're the producers. Are you kidding me? The cities would
No, no.
freaking starve.
Well,
Not
no,
just
and
that,
that's
taking nosedive.
no, and that's where I was going. When these communists get into power, they're going to try to quote unquote seize quote the means of production, without unironically realizing that the means of production is not a factory, it's not a machine. The means of production is the human mind.
Right.
And how long can you enslave the human mind before it rebels, before it revolts against you? It takes 5 fucking minutes. It takes 5 minutes of that shit before everyone just goes, fuck it. No, the machines are not going to replace us.
No,
The
definitely
machine. No. The human mind is not going to be overridden by AI.
no.
I'm no. It, there is something to be said about the chaos of the human mind that makes it um, almost incompatible for a machine or an AI to anticipate. Like one of the fun things to do with a computer AI is not follow the normal combat strategies to try and throw it off. Hmm.
Bob do.
Do I have a call-in number? All right. I said this at the beginning of the stream. In the description is a Discord link. In the Discord, there is a link in the general chat with a link to the stream. You can join the Discord and jump on the stream as per usual. That is always that's usually open. Sometimes I don't share it, but this time I have. So
I
go
don't
ahead.
know if we can trust them with video though. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. We'll we'll tentatively put you on with probably without video. Because reasons.
Reasons of degeneracy.
Absolute degeneracy. Oh, good lord. So,
Uh,
my good American gentlemen, where do we go from this point? Oof.
All right. So,
Banana Man just joined the Discord.
oh
So,
God, Banana Man.
yeah, you don't say. Oh, mercy.
where do we go from here? So, there's a couple of avenues for us. And the most traditional avenue that's been taken by the right is to just go, okay, we lost, but hey, it's whatever. We'll wait another 4 to 8 years. But in this case, it's not gonna be. It can't be like that. So
No.
we can all see that a lot of funky shit's going on with this election. We are wanting to investigate this, and I don't care if you're left, right, center, purple. It doesn't matter. If you believe in America, if you believe in our system of government in any way, shape, or form, you have to want to investigate this. There's too many inconsistencies. It's ridiculous not to investigate this.
Well, and
Second,
the okay, go,
yeah,
no, continue with that second point. I apologize for interrupting.
oh, no worries, man. Second of all, beyond act, what does the right do for activism? Peaceful, woohoo America protests. While I do believe in America, I don't believe in its people. The people have had it far too easy for far too long. The suffering has not been close. They haven't seen, short of living in the hood, they haven't seen suffering up close since, dear God, World War II. No, the last time America saw suffering was during the 9/11 attacks, and everybody was for the war at that time. Let's not forget that the war on terror, even though it's been a hit or miss in a couple of places, was a war for revenge. It was a war to stop a particular organization that was committing shit, not just in America, but around the world. And 9/11 wasn't even their first attack. I think it was their third attack. Uh, two in Africa, and I think one in India. I can't remember where the destroyer was stationed at when was ported at when the speedboat ran into it. But the third option, and the one that the politicians seem to react to the most, especially from what we've seen recently. Well, I say recently, since the beginning, November of last year, actually, is literally, I hate to say this, violent protests. And that's all they respond to.
Let's not call them violent. Let's call them mostly peaceful.
Mostly peaceful, but fiery protests. Yes.
Well, and that's my fear is, well, it's not really my fear. Like, I actually hope that the right has the balls to actually, gird up thy loins and go forth and, fight for their country, fight for the integrity of their elections, fight for their, how do you say, fight
Fight
for
for
just
the American
a real
people.
country.
Yeah.
And it's what the left doesn't, and I was speaking about this to my father. The left does not understand the devastating power of right-wing terrorism. Every time anyone on the right in this country commits an act of quote unquote terrorism or violent or mostly peaceful protest, the effects cannot be ignored ever. Like it's never going to be just a oh, look at these rowdy people, they set up a commune. No, we're talking about straight up the occupation and acquisition of media stations.
Oh, yes.
That's what we're talking about. And then not only is that media station going to be occupied, there's going to be a line of armed Americans saying, to the National Guard, to the police, no, this is a protest. This is an armed protest. Do not cross this line. We're taking care of business. Get the fuck out.
That could possibly work. That could possibly work.
No, it won't. that won't even work. Look
I
at
know.
they had a 2A rally. What was it? 2 years ago. I know Terrence Pops did a video while he was at the protest, and I watched it because I was curious to see how this would pan out. I used to live just south of them in Ohio, and very freaking blue area. Michigan, as far as I knew, was pretty damn blue. But hey, why wouldn't Detroit be blue?
All
But
right, so we have added a gent to the stream. Welcome, Job Doob.
I hope you like my alias.
Yeah. So how's it going, man?
Not bad. I I don't know. I saw your live stream on on some Telegram chat, and I was curious as the title was more intriguing because I was under the impression that Trump had that GSA thing going on, and that was like, but he didn't like say anything that was directly implicating a concession or such. But I mean, it is a tell. But he did reiterate that he would continue his legal battle.
No, and you know what? You're absolutely right, and there is no doubt that this is a demoralization tactic on the part of the media and those of us who are tuned in to the news at large. It just doesn't look good. It just doesn't. It doesn't seem that. It seems like Trump is losing confidence. And another thing that we were discussing in Discord, if you're in there, is one of the best things about Trump and his allies, like Project Veritas, is it's good when they go quiet.
Do you think so? I think.
Oh,
See, what makes me curious is that like the reason why Trump is much better than Mitt Romney is because Mitt Romney is already dead. If you remember in 2012, there were these like real serious allegations of voter fraud, not just in Pennsylvania, but also in Ohio, which he lost, which by the way went
yeah.
like very heavily towards Trump this time. I mean, they said that just to put this into perspective, Mitt Romney lost both Florida and Ohio. He lost Ohio by a larger margin than he did Florida, and Trump won both Ohio and Florida with majorities that were actually quite comfortable. And these were sort of the two deciding swing, well, sort of the most important swing states that Mitt Romney needed to win at the time.
They're called bellwether states, and the rule is if a Republican can usually take Ohio and Iowa and Florida, that he will win the Electoral College, which is another indication of voter fraud because it breaks the pattern. It breaks the norm of how the votes and the data break down generally.
Well, it's not
But you're
just the
right.
states; it's the counties. The bellwether
Yeah,
counties
I've seen the
are
counties.
far more important because of how specific they've been. Right. So, like Ohio, the last time Ohio voted for the wrong, or should I not? I wouldn't say the wrong. The losing candidate was in 1960 when it voted for Richard Nixon over Jack Kennedy. Florida has had a less, consistent streak, but still fairly. I mean, it was a very Republican place after the Southern strategy, and where, for example, Nixon, I think, won every single county in '72, and as well as Reagan in '84 in Florida. Maybe one of the northern counties he missed out on, but Florida voted for Bush Senior twice. It only voted for Clinton once. But yeah, the point still very much stands, right? Like Florida, but some of these bellwether counties. I mean, there's about 18 of them, and on average, they are about 80 to 90% correct. Like 80 to 90% of them will vote for the correct candidate, and typically it's around 90%. And the last time that they went like below this threshold to a significant manner was in 1960. Where about 50% of them were right. Now only about 18% of them were right. In 1960, I think it's pretty well known that Jack Kennedy had the help of the Irish Mafia and the Italian mob, who flipped Illinois and Texas to Jack Kennedy in order to. I mean, everybody knows about the dead people voting in Chicago, and there's countless movies. It's just popular culture at this point.
Yes,
but at this point. What we have to do. This isn't, America of 1960, and even America of 8 years ago. There was still like at least an illusion of polite society.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, when we have, and I don't want to, meme about these people in the House, like in the most democratic and the safest districts, like Omar and Cortez, because those, I don't really think that they're just mouthpieces, in my opinion, right? But what they represent is far more dangerous, because it is quite popular among the left to, for example, put Trump supporters in a sort of a re-education or sort of a detainment camp. I mean, this, we can boil this all down to, right? Liberalism it should not be treated as a political ideology. It is a mental disorder. It is, as Dr. Michael Savage, your great esteemed radio host, who's been doing this for 26 years, and who, check him out. Anybody who hasn't, he's
we know Savage.
Yeah, everyone here knows who Michael Savage is. I mean, come on.
I just figured, I just found you guys, so I don't know. I'm happy to hear that you do know of him. So,
but no, there's another aspect to this that I want to entertain. If Trump does not win, and he probably won't pull this out of the bag in the courts, I hope he does. I hope that he, there's always that 1 in a million chance that you hope succeeds, but let's be realists for a moment and assume that the trajectory goes in the same fashion as it has today.
Well, let's not be so defeatist. Let's say.
Okay, quick question for you, Job Doob. What is the strategy behind conceding anything to him and allowing the transition to begin?
I really don't know, but I because I'm not in the administration, obviously, but there are several speculative takes that I've heard from people in the conservative talk sort of world. They may be grifters, which is actually a big problem we have here. There's a lot of people who ask for donations and get very wealthy off of this, and it's not just something that has happened over the past couple of years. It's been something even in talk radio since the 70s. But I mean, there's some people who say that it's to stop the threats that are coming against the administration, the government, the GSA, and there's some other things talking about it's like a conditional thing that, like, in the event of a transition, we already have given you the things necessary. But what's important to note is that during Bush v. Gore, this didn't happen until Gore conceded. When Gore conceded in December of 2000, only then did this transition begin. So I don't know what to make of it. It doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't taste good. But he still said, they're going to continue with the lawsuits, and Sidney Powell is continuing to beat her drum. If this all turns out to be a fake, we're going to have a very disoriented and distrustful grassroots movement, because we don't know who's going to be who, because we're going to all feel like we've been conned, and we don't know how far that's gone down the chain of command in, say, like Republican or conservative outlets, or like county Republican parties or something like that, right?
Oh, I agree with that, and my theory behind it is the only reason he's keeping the lawsuits and stuff going is fundraising, is my opinion.
Do you think he's just a total grifter at this point?
Yeah, I think he's trying to get as much money as he can on the way out. My prediction is the December 9th is when they have to have the
I think it's September 14th, but yeah, whatever date it is.
So my guess is by next weekend, Sunday shows, he's going to concede.
Did you just come to that conclusion recently, or was that just have you been like that since November?
No, when they began to separate from the lawyer the other day.
Oh, well, actually, I got clarification on that. Sidney Powell was never part of Trump's team. See, the reason why the Sidney Powell and Giuliani had their conference, the liberal media wanted to spin it as if they separated, but they didn't. See, they're working on two completely separate cases. One, there's a monetary aspect to this. that it's different funds going to different court cases. And two, Sidney Powell is working on something that is far more broad and requires probably more time than the Giuliani case, which is really restricted. They have to be on their ball immediately, and but they are most certainly part of the same. How I see it is, if you are to believe the people that are cooked up on all the drugs like QAnon and things like that. This is sort of, I don't actually know if he said that, but just as an analogy, if one were to believe that Trump is really legit, like absolutely he's going to blow up the swamp and this is going to be the moment of truth, one might compare that Giuliani's case is going to win up the election. Well, Sidney Powell is going to be coming on in like perhaps January or something, and then that's going to be the thing that will blow up the swamp or whatever, I guess. But it's the fantasies. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, because what they're saying is really serious. Like, if they screw this up,
and hang on. Well, you're both hitting. You're both dancing around the same fundamental truth, and that is, Trump is asking for a lot of funds, despite the fact that he has an extremely low chance in multiple court cases that may or may not go through.
Well, what makes it a low chance, right? Because his strategy is to get it to the Supreme Court, which would nullify. Because do you not, like, here's another thing, I don't know if you know this, but the certification of a vote really doesn't mean anything, right? If a vote is audited, which it can be, it does. The state legislatures, they don't even. There are multiple ways to get approval for an audit, and it doesn't just have to come from state legislatures. It can come from, I think, several. If you get it from a court order too, I think it's possible to get that. Right, you have if the audit ends up being, if the audit ends up being one vote different, if it ends up being in any way different than the original tally, the vote is automatically uncertified.
Okay,
so
hang on. We have a correction here for just a second.
Earlier, I talked about Dan Crenshaw red flag laws. Sorry, aside. So looking through it, it's Dan Crenshaw did say that the red flag laws are a part of the conversation he wants to have about making America, his area, safer for Americans overall, but that is not a complete solution to the problem, and that it does have ways it can be abused.
Got it. Okay, so I understand what you're saying, and I know that there is hope in these court cases.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
However,
here's the thing: we don't have any control over this, right?
Well, no, and exactly that's what I'm trying to shift the conversation to, is the things that we, the general public, do have to things that we actually have control over, and where I see Trump might be going to sort of hand us that control. In the event of a Trump defeat, not saying that it's going to happen, do you guys see him using the funds that he's gathering for these lawsuits to purchase a news company? And would that be a good step forward, or would it just kind of would it perpetuate the stalemate?
Yeah, I think it would be great for him to do. The problem with that is I would have loved for him to actually attack the news when he became president. I would have loved for him to boot all the mainstream media out of his press conferences and have them try to sue to get back in access. That's what I would have liked to see, and stick it to him while he was president.
Yeah,
see, that's a very curious thing to say, right? Because it's true. Like, he Trump had, they have their press conferences, and you have the media come in, and we have sort of the traditional or whatever the established media. Why didn't he revoke their press passes in exchange for something like the Epic Times and the
Right.
Gateway Pundit and things like that? So it's a curious question. What I think is that if Trump goes on to start a news thing, right? This isn't the 1990s anymore. It's not H.W. Bush lost, and we're getting a college dork for president, as in like Bill Clinton or something like this. The game has changed. The society is no longer polite in any way, right? There is no, and it's not even Trump's. Like liberals will love to say, this is a fight for the soul, whatever the hell Joe Biden says these days. It's a fight for the soul of our country. Really, these things, these outlandish sort of this rhetoric, this polarization has been going on not only since the Obama administration, but probably over the past, at least since the 80s. I mean, there was certainly an escalation of polarization around the Barry Goldwater Johnson era, and also in the 70s was Nixon, the silent majority, and trying to like a semi-return to normalcy that never actually happened because Nixon was a rhino at best.
Mm-hmm.
But we have now, right? Because the liberals are no longer pretending to be what like the old Democratic Party was, like the party of unions, the party against hardcore. I mean, that's funny because that's almost what Trump campaigned on in 2016. That's why he won a lot of these blue collar areas with a huge majority that Obama won with decent majorities in 2012 versus 2016 in places like Ohio and Michigan and elsewhere.
Well, I actually read a article where they state that Joe Biden actually underperformed Hillary Clinton in almost every area except for like 4 big cities.
Yeah, well, that's true. I was talking more 2016. The 2020 election is actually quite more interesting. So Donald Trump got the most percentage of minority votes since Richard Nixon in 1960, which is actually kind of significant. I can get more into that later. I just don't want to be the only one talking here. But what's funny too, I think the most prominent example, and I think this is just because I was, 2 most prominent examples was Miami-Dade County, which Hillary Clinton won by like 63, 69% or whatever back in 2016. But this time only went like 54% for Biden. He did incredibly well among Cubans, Venezuelans, etc. in that county
I can top that. There were counties in Texas that were 80% Hillary, like Houston and like places near San Antonio. Yeah, and these counties completely flipped to Trump. Like it went from 80 against Trump to like 50 or 60 for Trump. That is a massive flip. And in light of all of those flips and the sheer magnitude of Trump votes, I simply can't buy these election results.
Oh, I don't want them either.
I think the conversation among sane people is already over that.
Yeah.
This election is a fraud. Anybody who says that this election is not a fraud is either subject to their own cognitive dissonance, blind, deaf, and dumb, or on it. Yeah,
they're Kool-Aid drinkers.
Yeah.
Well, here's my problem with Trump getting his own news organization is that would have been that would have been a good idea. It would have been a great idea. It would have been a great place for us to gather and to rally behind, if not for the fact that he didn't take care of censorship first.
Yep.
So all he's going to do is give them a big magnet to blacklist immediately.
Go get Alex Jones.
Exactly. Trump will be the next Alex Jones. He'll be the next Breitbart. He'll be the next. So I get that people might like to see the notion of Trump, being this shadow kingmaker. The problem is the Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, the Silicon Valley oligarchy is just going to take wherever he goes and just try and plug up the holes.
Well,
And
let me. I might be able to chip in on perhaps why he didn't actively pursue the FANG, the Facebook, Apple, FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Google, right? Because so a lot of Trump's, at least before the pandemic, a lot of Trump's, and even now still, his staple mark, he would be tweeting almost like once every 2 weeks about the stock market, right? And this is where things get interesting. So, and because I can talk about the financials, no matter who's going to get elected, the economy is going to the shitter. But the thing is that even before the pandemic, and especially now, in the S&P 500, these big indexes that like all the pensions, 401ks are heavily invested into, have been extremely overweight in their representation in tech stocks, especially the big five, that being Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Google. In fact, that, I think, before the pandemic, it constituted about, I think, either 15 to 20% of the S&P 500, which is the most overweight it's ever been in 5 companies ever.
Okay, so let me see if I'm hearing this right. Is learn to code going to become learn to farm?
I don't know, but what I'm saying is that they're like, so if you're going to, right, if you're going to be like I created a great economy, and that can be measured by the stock market, but the stock market is heavily weighted towards big censorship companies, and if you break them up, that's going to cause their hyperinflated prices to perhaps implode, and then the stock market would take a big hit. And I mean, we all know what happened in 2008, and that partially assisted Obama in getting perhaps a larger victory over McCain.
That's the problem with this country right now. Is we came in, we base everything on economics. We don't have an economic problem in this country as much as we have a moral issue.
Oh no, it's true. I'm just trying to explain why.
Well, no, I will back that up. I will say that any America First platform should openly endorse a dip in the stock market prices to get to a place where our economy actually promotes and protects its own populace. Because if we don't accept those growing pains, we'll never get there. Our economic
so that's
policies,
what I felt he did with China. Our farmers took major hits when he negotiated the trade deal with China, when they were boycotting us. If you look at our farms, our dairy farms are damn near bankrupt right now. We had to sell some of our like Smithfield is sold to the Chinese, and the farms took a big hit. We've been subsidizing them for the last couple years to the billions.
Well, part of the problem also is farms are no longer family owned, but owned by big, vast fucking companies, and that's what gives them the ability to sell American real estate overseas. We don't have families that own farms anymore.
That's a very interesting point.
If we could bring everything back to the U.S., not just manufacturing of whatever goods we want, but also our food, who the hell else is going to feed the rest of the damn world? We give them all the damn food. We give them beans, bullets, and Band-Aids.
Yeah, well, that goes back. Why you think they wanted to buy our farms, China? Because I think we're the second largest food producer to China, but per capita,
number one.
No. They produce more food technically on a level.
No, they
might, but we are the biggest exporter.
But per capita, we're the most efficient farmers. We are the most efficient.
We are the biggest food exporter.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, and you have to understand, it's not just food in grand total. Yes, China might have a lot of rice.
Yeah.
But outside of anything else, they have Kobe beef and soy. The American agriculture economy has everything.
But
We
again,
have everything.
it gets back to morals. And like you said, we don't have independent farms. We were literally subsidizing our farmers to the degree where we were paying them not to grow stuff. We would come to
Yes.
farmers and be like, "Hey, we'll give you this much money to not grow."
It's not just that either. It's we don't have independence, period. Whenever a bunch of people get together and you tell them, hey, you're free to do whatever the hell you want now, what do those idiots do? Like a bunch of fucking zebras, they all act like each other.
Well, them subsidies are what is killing the independence, is what I'm saying. Those when you get so reliant on those subsidies, when they pull them subsidies, like if you took away all the subsidies from the dairy market, you might be paying $9 a gallon of milk. And if our government then pulls them subsidies and milk shoots up to $9 a gallon, they're going to go bankrupt. That's what I'm saying. They're dependent on these subsidies, which is in a way taking their freedom.
Well, it's not even that, like, because if there's a thing in economics called shared cost, right? If it's the same thing with what happens with like Obamacare. They talk about, in Obamacare, they said they tricked everybody into thinking that they were going to be taxing insurance companies, when in reality the insurance tax really would just be offloaded mostly, but not entirely, onto the consumer. And if the consumer can't afford, at least it's a little bit different in the Obamacare aspect of it, because you were forced to buy the insurance. But say with like milk, as like opposed to something like tap water or city water, you aren't forced to buy these products, and so prices can't remain artificially high in a manner that would be draining to the average consumer, such that aggregate demand cannot keep up with such high prices.
That's going to the high value of goods temporarily is going to be a very short-lived reality. And that's why when I say we need to expect and even promote a drop in the GDP or in the stock market, that's something that we should be actively promoting, because all of the quote unquote negative effects that would result in that are going to resolve themselves naturally, barring any more economic fuckery. But no, all of you are speaking the truth in terms of our agriculture, in terms of our of our jobs and whatnot. Here's my additional thing is, in terms of industry, in terms of the amount or lack thereof, the lack of investment that American companies are putting in the American populace, we are committing economic abortion.
Well, it's worse, right? Because when Trump put in these tax cuts, which are legitimate means of stimulating the economy, the first thing these companies did was, of course, give bonuses to their employees, which caused a temporary, like, 1 to 2 quarter boost. Because most people who don't have massive portfolios will go out and spend a good portion of that money, causing more demand and stimulating producers. Now, what happens to the rest of that money is that they did it, these companies, specifically Apple is very guilty of this, and various other big tech companies notorious for this as well. But there's other examples too. They, one, bought call options for their employees, and two, they used that money as collateral to then borrow and leverage that money, sometimes 10 times, 40 times, to then buy back their own stock. And then their employees are then paid via the call options that were bought by the company on the behalf of their employees. And if the stock price does move up significantly, I mean, look at Spotify, for example, or Apple, or any of these. I mean, Tesla is probably the most egregious example, and they're with a PE of almost 1,000.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, these are very much companies that are sort of largely concentrated in California, and largely the only real source left of Californian wealth. I mean, the middle class has been destroyed and moved out of the country, or if whatever's left is moving out of the state. The working class has long since either died or moved to Idaho or Utah or Arizona. And what's left is people shitting in San Francisco mailboxes or the homeless tents of Los Angeles, and then also the blue chip life of the people on Twitter and then Apple, etc. And that's really the bulk of the California economy is this fake. I mean, these are not even tech companies; these are data analysis companies. I mean, really, we could say California is the department of the Stasi, of the communist East German military administration, because these companies really only make money off of collecting your data and selling it to other people. I mean, what does Facebook do? That they've been selling people's data to all sorts of different questionable party. I mean, Apple too. They sell the health app that they have on your iPhone.
Oh yeah.
And not to mention, I mean, Google too. They're the same thing. Amazon. I mean, your product searches, things like that, and it's funny too, right? Because none of these companies are worth at all what they are valued in the market, and then that's another thing. I mean, a lot of conservatives will, and I have friends of mine who will talk about who, a couple months ago they were talking about like, wow, look at how much the stock market has recovered. I mean, it is helpful for people who are already invested in it, but it doesn't actually, if it doesn't reflect the real value of the economy or the actual, or how easy it is for other people to get, who, young people especially who don't have a lot of money to get in, it's highly detrimental. I mean, the best thing that could happen to the generation that's now becoming, that's now going in the workforce, which would be the millennials, Generation Z, etc., would be for an absolute meltdown in equity prices, especially home values. I mean, how many stories have we heard of people, not just in places like London or Toronto, but even places in even Idaho now. All the Californians are whatever's left of wealthy Californians are buying up all the real estate. I mean, look at the price of land has just skyrocketed. And some of this is because of legitimate demand and growing population, but a lot of it isn't. I mean, the United States isn't really a growing population. It's a lot of it is just hoarding and because of bad leverage and debt. So, and I mean, this system. I think, judging on Trump's actions, especially his recent failed appointment, but he might try again, of some of the more fundamentalist people at the Federal Reserve, I think he recognizes this, but it's a balancing act, right? You want to you have people who are very much vested in a lot of Republicans who are very much vested in their 401ks and their assets, and a lot of people who are just about ready to retire that are very Republican. And the last thing that they'd want to see is
crash
problems. Yeah, exactly. And we're going to get it no matter what.
Well, housing's coming. Let me tell you, we're at 2.8% right now on a 30-year. Okay, how low can they go? What are they going to do? Interest-free mortgages pretty soon? I mean, give me a.
Well, see, that's very important, right? See, because declining interest rates are not actually signs. It's not stimulative, right? A declining interest rate on something like the 30-year is a sign of contracting financial conditions. It doesn't mean things are good.
It's stimulative to debt. People tend to borrow more when rates are lower. For example, like 2x4s were almost $6 a 2x4 here about a month ago, and now they're at about $5. But before COVID, 2x4s were $1.98. Okay, now
that's courtesy of the CCP.
And the Canadian closing their export of timber. Yes. But
if you have builders, right? Like I've been in building in construction in my life, right? If you have builders that are willing to still borrow to build these houses, right? And a lot of times these houses, you can't even sell them for what they're building them for, right?
Well, you're very correct. And it's funny, too, because there's two great examples that we can put in here. Recently, the Home Builders Association had a survey that comes out, I think, every month or something, and it was the highest ever on record since the 1980s of their confidence level, meaning they were so confident of new people buying homes or taking out debt to buy homes on a level that has not been seen since the 1980s. To put it in sort of an anecdotal reference, I mean, the house that I lived in was built in the 1980s, so there's that for it, right?
Well, hang on. Where is that market going to go with a Biden presidency? See, I don't
let
see
me
any
finish.
of this going well. Go on.
Let me finish, because there's a second side of the equation. Now there's the Home Buyers Association that also had a survey, which is actually, comes out roughly the same time this month, and it was less than average, right? So it was far less than average. So there's a massive disconnect in terms of economics, right? We have no connection to the real world. I mean, the only reason why the economy has not entirely imploded since March, and we can get into other reasons for that, is mainly because of this ridiculous stimulus program that was put forth, and it's funny too, right? So we had the coronavirus, or we still do, I guess, which in the beginning, from what it looked like, came out of China, was a very deadly disease, but it's since significantly weakened to the point that it's more of a political tool than anything. It's a real disease. But lockdowns currently are not a serious effort to actually try to contain.
Lockdowns don't work.
Well, the thing is that the lockdowns don't work when the disease is pervasive, right? If we had locked down the entire country back in February, or at least closed the borders and just did the most draconian shit in the first
real lockdown. They left the fast food places open. Like, everyone knows that.
Not just fast food places. They left liquor stores open.
I know.
Really,
lottery. Your lottery was necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really ludicrous because I mean, in the beginning it was like, oh my god, blah blah blah. Walmart is closed. I can't get my canned soup. We're going on like a serious zombie apocalypse. And then a day later they had all this other stuff. Don't get me
excited.
But it's really, now it's just economic warfare. I mean, it's all to the detriment of small businesses, and you have. I used to sort of shrug off, or I wouldn't say shrug. I used to think that wow, okay, people sitting at home. What's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, wouldn't you think a break from work would also, at least if you got the checks, but what happened in the first half of the year, it can't be too bad. But then now, with obviously none of that happening, I mean, you're really talking about a lot of deaths that are happening because of suicides and drug overdoses.
Well, I see this as a basically redistribution. They're trying to redistribute wealth through this. They decided that it's not the way to go is not by taking the money. They can't do that. There will be resistance to that. So just have this fake economic collapse, right? And then when it collapses, it's a reset. Everyone that's gonna be hurt by this is gonna have bad credit, right? And then they can send out the platinum plan like Trump was trying to do, but they'll even have it bigger with Biden, and it'll be, instead of 500 billion, it'll be like 2 trillion, and then they'll be able to sell our assets to minorities for pennies on the dollar.
Oh, well, there was just a bill. That's a very curious point. There was just a bill recently talking about giving, I think, 130 million acres to black farmers because of reasons, question mark.
Yeah, because there's not enough black farmers.
Right. It's funny because they didn't learn from what happened in Rhodesia or South Africa, right? I mean, South Africa used to be one of the largest exporters of food relative to its country population. Now it has to import food, and their currency is going almost the same way as what happened to Zimbabwe. I mean, we already
less than toilet paper.
Right. So within Zimbabwe, it's actually it was so bad that there was bills. These bills were not printed in Zimbabwe, by the way. They were printed in Germany. And by the time they were done printing the $10 trillion Zimbabwe bill, it was not worth anything. So they had to go to the 100 trillion, I think.
And
But-
let me guess, they also subsidized their farmers and paid them to not grow stuff too.
Well, see, this is the thing about affirmative action or things like see, it's no longer about equality, right? Equality was the words and sort of the and this sort of points in the whole different direction, right? Equality was the big buzzword of the 1960s, or even since even 10 years ago, it was all about equality, equal rights, blah blah blah, equal rights for homosexuals, and now equal legal protection for marriage, blah 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 blah. But now that's all out the window. Since every man, woman, bird, and a thing can have have all rewritten all the different definitions that they need. It's now about equity, as they call it. Now, what is equity in legal definition? It really means what is fair. Now, what is fair is subjective. It's very subjective, and can be all sorts. It can be determined to all sorts of different
Hang on.
interpretation.
I can abbreviate this. Have you guys seen communism up close or the byproducts of it?
No.
Yep.
All right. Oh, cool. Awesome. Another man of the world. All that equity is, all that equality is bringing everyone down to the lowest common denominator humanly possible.
Yeah.
That's
No,
all
no,
it is.
but that's what equality is by definition. But like in sort of if you were to do it like not in a legal sense, but in like in a sense that it is like you would force everybody to be equal rather than like equal opportunity under the law. But see, that was sort of the idea of beforehand. You had this idea that you'd have equal opportunity under the law. Now it's about equity. And equity is far different than equality, right? Equity is like I just said, it's the definition is fairness, but fairness can be subjective. So this is really where things get scary, because if depending on who's on the other side or who is the decision making, like if it is Kamala Harris from San Francisco or San Francisco, who gets to decide, right? What is equitable? I mean, just look at what happens on university campuses now. They no longer talk about equality or anything like that. It's now about diversity and inclusion or equity or because that's where things become very scary, because they can decide exactly what they're talking about now, that confiscating 140 million acres without compensation from Caucasian farmers in the United States is equitable.
When is the right going to redistribute, Joe Biden's 160,000 votes?
I don't know. That would be a very good way to run elections. I think we should, whatever is equitable, which is to be determined by the morally superior, self-anointed people who just happen to have enough political power to do so. Maybe, maybe we should have a vote on who is the most equitable, and then they can decide where the actual votes go.
Listen,
well, that's not going to work, because especially after what we just saw now.
No, I'm joking, but
these people are not to even be entertained. They're complete dolts. I mean, one of the politicians came out the other day, I forget who it was, and he literally said, like, if you're complaining about shit on the ground in San Francisco, that's like a form of white supremacy, complaining about the shit on the streets.
Right.
Well,
but
they
the
would
thing
say
is,
that, but
we don't have to take them
here's my thing.
seriously until they become legitimate political forces. And that's what they are, because they're about to enter the White House if Biden wins.
Uh-huh. And that's my point, is when I joked about redistributing the Joe Biden's mystery vote injection. All of this comes down to force. All of it.
Yep.
Like there's not a single aspect of this that will not be reduced to absolute brute force. That's just because when they take the vote by force, you have no other option. You have no other recourse. So the question here is, we can shoot the shit about the interesting nuances of how the political and economic realities have shifted around Trump and his election and why he didn't do what. The fact of the matter is, our votes were stolen. Our voices are gone. So,
yeah, and the whole time they're preaching to us about unity. I don't want to unite with these people whatsoever. Give me a break.
And you should after 2016.
Huh?
They didn't do it after 2016. Why the hell should we do it now?
Well, I don't know how
because
much you guys like watch like the other YouTubers. Like, I watch even like a lot of the black YouTubers. What amazes me with a lot of these black YouTubers is they'll be like complete. They're as big of conspiracy theorist as the right is. There's some of them are as bad as Alex Jones talking about the man. Usually it's the white man, right? The white man's out to get them, right? But yet then they wake up and they go vote Democrat and want to give government more power. Right? It's like so delusional to me. It's like they almost have that syndrome with the hostage, you know, what do they call that?
Yeah, so it's Stockholm syndromes,
Stockholm syndrome.
And the problem with that is, why would red-blooded Americans continue voting Republican after this debacle?
They're not.
Yes, exactly. And the problem that we have is, even if Trump were to do something as radical and fun and crazy as start his own news network, we still have a censorship issue, which would make him completely irrelevant in about a week. In about a week, he would be irrelevant.
Who,
And
Donald Trump?
so,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Oh, if he started his own news network, it would be irrelevant and blacklisted in the space of a week. There would be no. It would be worse than Breitbart. It would be worse.
They're going to come after him. They're going to try to throw him in jail if he remains relevant.
And so, at the end of the day, we're in a situation where we realize we don't have the power of the vote. We can't count on any media voices to accurately represent us, and those who would automatically be given the kibosh. So the question is, for red-blooded Americans who supported America First and the MAGA movement, with all of the flaws that it did have, as Trump, embodied it. What are we going to do? What are our options here?
What you should do is go after the social media. We should be outside of Twitter, Facebook.
No.
Complete
That's not
rotation.
gonna work. That's not going to work.
I would disagree as well. See, there is an old saying that politics is just the argument on whoever has the monopoly on legalized violence. Yeah. And
correct.
I don't want to sound cynical here, but if you remember back to May and what was happening in Minneapolis and then spread throughout the entire country, those words could have not come more true. And we see that today, right? We have a country divided between the useful idiots, the stooges, the people who are involved, the people who have perceived personal self-vested interest, perhaps like teachers' unions, etc.
The people that can't think for themselves.
Those people too. And we also have a class of people who are, who either currently, depending on where they stand with all the debacle that is happening right now, either feel utterly betrayed, very disparaged about the future, or have the idea that perhaps in the next 24 to next week or two we might see the Kraken unleashed.
Yeah,
right, right. We are not a. It's really funny how liberals virtue signal on like, this, it's time to heal, or make America whole again, as Hillary said. But the funny thing is, their way of doing this, and they have said it quite explicitly, is just the outright elimination or suppression, or of the other side. And they have this monopoly on violence.
We're the tolerant side. In my opinion, Trump should have went in when them riots started and cracked all their damn heads. Cracked every one of their damn heads.
Well, the problem with that would, my bad.
No, I'm just going to jump in and say, look, we can look for a legal Kraken as far as this election is concerned, and I hope that Kraken does reveal itself. But the real Kraken, as we've already discussed, any idiot who says that this election wasn't stolen is, an ideological fool who we can't have a reasonable discussion with. The real Kraken is the American people not accepting this election and wanting something to do about it. That's the real Kraken. The Million MAGA March was the real Kraken. And it's a kraken that they fear, and it's a kraken that needs to be focused and centered on the destruction of those who have betrayed them. And we need an action plan. We need a leader. We need a figurehead for that. I don't
And
think
for
Trump
all these
being
people,
that.
for all these people that don't believe that the left would steal an election, yeah, violence and burning down cities is acceptable, but election fraud is the line they're not going to cross. Give me a
Right,
damn
but
break.
it wasn't even just that. Because when the riots were happening, the narrative in Minneapolis, like I live here, so I
All
can
right,
say
hang
exactly what
on,
happened.
hang on. But before we get that, we do have a good question in chat. What would you recommend is the way forward for white Americans? Should they embrace further right-wing positions?
Ooh, I got a good one for this.
Yeah, well, let me. I'll give you your response to this. But I'm just going to start by saying I'm a Latter-day Saint, and my standard for anyone on the political spectrum, whether you're for me, whether you're against me, the position that we should all embrace is encapsulated in a document titled and released by my faith titled "The Family of Proclamation to the World." Go find that on the internet and read it. If you cannot agree on those basic principles outlined in that document and want them instituted in government, we're all fucked. And my entire way of thinking and viewing the political world now has completely shifted to saying this is what we need to focus on. As far right as that document may seem, um, that is the dividing line. We're divided between people willing to embrace the fact that humanity is full of agrarian monsters and those wanting to pretend that they're enlightened evolved
Shysters.
beings. Exactly. We're not enlightened. We're agrarian monsters, and we need to gather around those willing to admit that we are agrarian monsters, that we are social creatures who exist in a family unit, and that all of society is built around that. That's the best way forward,
And
and that's the one thing that needs to be fought for.
I'm
So,
LDS also, right? And to think that document would be considered far right wing is laughable.
I know, but
Well, you see,
Spicy Pete.
Elizabeth Warren is considered a far right wing, back in the Green Party.
Well,
Here's my problem. Here's my major problem, though, is I'm supposed to, be a nice Christian. I'm supposed to, embrace people of all nations, creeds, and colors, and all that whatnot. And yet, I listened to the announcement of the launch of the Justice Party, and I compared the declarations and goals of the Justice Party to the family, and they are on point. I have more in common, and I should have more promotion of the values of the Justice Party than Charlie Kirk's Turning Point establishment organization, which is a complete pro-tranny crock of shit. So that's all I'm going to say on that. So, Spicy P, what were you going to add?
We got to bring it back to fundamentals. And to do that, I need you guys to listen to this one. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to the separation. Do you guys know where that's from?
I'm going to guess the Declaration of Independence.
Nice. That is the opening line to the Declaration of Independence. We've gone past the point where we can no longer freely exchange ideas and opinions without getting shouted down or beat up. We're past that point now.
Yes, we are, and it looks bleak. But as I have openly stated, I'm a Latter-day Saint. I read a book of scripture called the Book of Mormon. If you want to understand exactly what happened this election, if you want to understand what we're going through, pick up a Book of Mormon. I don't care if you believe it, but I want you to go to the index, find a term called secret combinations, and read every verse under that topic.
It's a good read, whether you believe it or not. Let me tell you.
Whether you believe it or not, look up secret combinations and read on them. That is exactly what we're going through.
And
I know that's not what anyone came here for.
The ending is quite a hoot in Nanny.
So, I just had to throw that plug in because if you want to understand what my perspective and where I'm coming from and where I want this nation to go and how it needs to be achieved, that's the best place I could lead you. So, is there anything else from the panel?
It depends how deep you want to go.
As deep as you want, Daddy.
Oh my God.
Giggity. All right. So earlier we did
No
talk
homo.
about
No homo.
earlier we did talk about a two-state solution. We are at the point where a two-state solution can be declared through a Declaration of Independence, but there would have to be one uniting force for that to happen. That's not going to happen. Nobody has a united opinion or thought or idea.
The only chance we have is through Christianity, but the body of Christ is so weak right now, I don't see it happening.
Well, it would have to be Christianity and war. Let's be honest.
Well,
Our captors are not going to let us walk out and find our promised land. Let's make that clear.
They won't even let us go to church right now.
well,
Amen,
let's
brother.
look at this in a sort of manner that is, I think, has been failed to address. I don't know how many of you have seen in full the Yuri Benzovov's lecture on demoralization
Yuri
from the 1980s.
Bezmenov's my
Yes.
fucking
Yeah.
hero.
See,
No. But before
Yeah.
Yuri, about 10 or 20 years before Yuri, there was a man named Ezra Taft Benson, and
Yep.
his talk on communism was top kecks. Like he was before Yuri Bezmenov, and he called every single point. And they did the same thing in the 1960s that they're doing today, calling pro-American organizations Nazi and racist. Same playbook, same strategy, same everything. But Yuri was also on point, and he was an insider. So please do continue with the demoralization.
right. So one of the strategies that he talked about was the best thing that the KGB was taught to do is to make their enemies essentially fight each other, so that there would have to be no foreign intervention whatsoever, and that the enemy would essentially dissolve itself.
Yep.
Now, when I hear two-state solution, it sounds very good on paper, but we must remember, right, the whole collapse of the Berlin Wall and the whole withdrawal from the Eastern Bloc, as many of you know, at least many of the more astute people know, is a complete fraud. The STB, for example, in Czechoslovakia, which was the equivalent of the KGB during the communist times, had essentially introduced a new, more civilian-friendly, like a non-swamp, I guess, government into the central government, but the intelligence agency, the STB, was still, and this is the same that would happen in Romania and Bulgaria and Poland and East Germany, etc., and in the Soviet Union. And Ukraine and everywhere else, they essentially blamed this new non-swamp government, and then took the new, they took the people who were in the STB, the KGB, became the new government. They became the oligarchs. They became, Putin is a perfect example. He was a former KGB agent, and they became the government, right? And America's, in the perception in America was very much, okay, well, communism's over, the Berlin Wall fell over, and yada, yada, yada. But now it was a strategic withdrawal, and that's very well documented. And regardless, I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole the whole rabbit hole of exactly what Russia has been sort of dealing with, or I wouldn't say Russia is like an ethno-political unit, but more like the regime that has been there since the establishment of the Soviet Union, has been actively working to radicalize both the left and the right. and eventually that's going to cause, from their analysis, from especially when Yuri Bezmenov said, I mean, the idea would to make it a impossibly reconcilable situation where we would have these discussions for such that would have been unheard of, or seen as completely ridiculous only 10 or even 5 years ago, of things like a new like a declaring a two-state solution or something like that.
So if I can just sum it up, just on what I'm hearing, the two-state solution would essentially, if it were to happen, it would be a farce.
Well, it's not even that, right? Even the attempt, even like if outright, even if a successful, well-established insurgency that appeared across the United States happened, like a collapse scenario, is exactly what this long-term 30-year sort of, or 60, even 100-year deeply entrenched policy and strategy that the Soviet Union and especially the KGB, which previously was the NKVD, and previously was the Cheka, and previously the Emergency Committee Against Counter-Revolutionaries, which killed 1 million Russians in the period of about a month. These are the people that we're dealing with, right? And what my point is obviously we want sovereignty. Obviously we want expression and freedom in a pure sense, not a freedom as in like the ability to be degenerates, but freedom as in a freedom of the mind and freedom to inquiry and expression into natural, healthy society. But
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. It wouldn't be enough to simply walk away from the enemy. We need to
because the problem is the war is already here no matter what. And the more things escalate, the better it is. It seems better for us, right? It seems better that we have now entered the sphere finally after many, many years of like NAFTA bullshit and, Clinton, the slow march to neoliberal hell.
I think you're right. I think that in terms of the mainland USA, that patriots need to take their country back, not try and succeed to a portion of it.
Right, but here's what's more important, right? Because
go on.
Any amount of chaos, the further things get, the more chaotic it gets, regardless if it's what's the outcome or the desired outcome, a two-state solution or a complete take your country back type thing. The more we get into a collapsed state, the less the United States really exists as a real. And this is exactly what this KGB thing, this long-term strategy has been aiming to do. We saw the seedings of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for example, in the 1970s is a very prominent example of this. She wrote in the 1970s that she wanted the age of consent to be under the age of 12, right? Things that were ludicrous. But today, the left wing is just on the verge of essentially endorsing something like that. They're already pedophile apologists in many cases, right? And these are the same people. The left in America are the same people who are calling for the putting in camps of Trump supporters. And I don't just mean like people who may be more aware or akin to things or knowledgeable to things, but like your average small business owner in a small town in the Midwest. That's who they're talking about putting into camps. And in their own words, like a Nazi Germany style re-education or a Imperial Japan or something like that, right? And it's what really the only conclusive thing that I can say from this is that we have been heading under, this is really quite obvious, under a precipice of a huge cliff of change. And what I want to say, we can't just look at this.
I'm right there with you already. I'm all like, you and I are on the same wavelength, and Bevo, if he remembers his Book of Mormon studies, you're right on the money. You're right.
But it's quite important. Right?
There's a Russian writer, I forget his name, and he wrote a book about basically like the fifth pillar, the fifth column, and how to take down America. I forget his name, but I think he's still alive to this day. But
What's most important is that we can't just think of the playing field as just our end goal. We have to see, right, because they will dupe us into, because for example, Putin has been funding all sorts of nationalists. I mean, and even people that are not just nationalists, but even what is like what is a really good example? Let's take somebody who's probably been totally discredited already. David Duke, for example, is somebody who has who's been in Moscow for a long extended period of time, and has been pushing the pro-Russian narrative. Well, if any nationalist whatsoever of any kind actually looks at what Russia does, and I should say the Russian regime, they fund nationalists in other countries and then ban it in their own country, right? If the KGB, if the communist forces get their way, the ones who have been funding these pseudo nationalists, they're the people who are going to get them there, which will be the radicalization of the left and the right. They are not going to get their way. You are just going to be another pawn or a stooge into fulfilling the communist prophecy in causing the destabilization of the status quo.
And if we do nothing, we're headed to that same direction too.
Yes, which is the dilemma that we must figure out. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
I don't know how to solve it. Not yet.
That's a good comment in the question. That's a good question in the comments.
It is. It is. I'm going to read it out loud. Can Trump's loss be seen as an opportunity for the right to be emboldened, as they are no longer trying to hold on to executive power? Can they start utilizing violent strategies like the left side? Here's my addendum. Here's my addendum to that. The short answer is yes, but we cannot be violent like the left, because the left are kicking at an open door. The left already have the invitation of the establishment to do what they want to do. The right are going to have to be brutal. They're going to have to be effective. They're going to have to shock and awe to a degree that the enemies who try to voice against them are either too terrified or completely inept to respond. We have to send a message that the lies the media perpetuates are all that they have. That they have no, that the use of that they are powerless against us. It's the image that they want Antifa to have as this fearsome group that no one can stand against. We have to make that real, dude. Dude. We have to make that real for the left, instead of the left pretending or gaslighting it to us via Antifa's tactics.
Well, see, we can't. I think what's really important for us to take away is that regardless.
No, hang on. I've got one from Spicy first.
All right, so right now we know right off the bat the particular people that target the right, and it's not going to matter whether Trump wins or loses. We're going to lose, period. The people that target us are the media and the other aristocrats up in DC. In order to be able to get the unfiltered truth out, in order to be able to have a fair chance, is to take down the media. There's no peaceful way to do that. You will have to do like, I don't know if you guys remember the game Freedom Fighters Fight for Liberty City on the PS2.
No.
There's a section in it where so the game overall, communist Russia takes over America. Well, in order to get the rest of the rebellion going, the Freedom Phantom, who is the head of this rebel group, takes over a news station and broadcasts an uncensored TV signal of them taking this news station and flying the American flag over it. That's essentially what's going to have to happen in real life, and it's going to be bad. And you'll have to do
Yeah.
the same thing for DC itself. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. Peaceful protests don't work. The right has this nasty habit of, working and having other things to do. The other problem is because of that, the right has the most to lose when it comes to a violent protest.
Yeah.
Most right wing individuals, or at least Republicans, most centered people, we follow the damn rules as best as we can until we morally disagree with it.
Well, and we
Well,
also have family. We have children.
Exactly.
Right?
That's why we have the most to lose.
The left tend to have no children. Right? They only got to worry about themselves.
Well,
Yeah,
it's quite
they are
funny.
very
It echoes back to exactly to what Reagan said in his '64 Goldwater speech. He said,
hell yeah.
his quote was, "History will wonder why those who had the most to lose did the least to stop what came."
And that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to have to happen.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, right, this is where things become very important. Mitt Romney made a very good point in 2012 that the United States at that time, and it's only gotten worse, by the way, has about 47% of the population at that time that was essentially supporting the rest of it. Or 47% was being leached, were leeching on the rest of like the 52%.
Yeah.
Or 53%.
I remember that. He was labeled a racist.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because facts have a political tinge to it that can be interpreted as such. And the less and less that population becomes, the more and more crazy shit becomes. And also this can be reflected in an economic standpoint. See, I don't know how many people actually really understand how important economics is to the side of this equation. Because without, as you were saying, people who follow the rules and contribute to society more than they take in, without those people, society cannot exist. And if we look at where at least even the federal government is going with its deficit spending, and it's not just them. I mean, look, if you combine them with the states and the city government, it's even worse, and the municipal governments. This country is not going to, I mean, we are either headed to a massive deflationary Great Depression 10 times, or we are headed to a hyperinflationary death spiral of like, which would actually be worse than deflation, by the way.
Worse than the Weimar Republic after World War I when they had to print off all that.
Yeah, well, it would be it would rival Hungary after World War II, which was the worst,
even better,
the worst case of hyperinflation in history that was ever recorded. So you have, I mean, those are the really, and that's from the economic standpoint. But the implications then, what happens, right? You have what was the largest generation, but is still almost the largest generation, the baby boomers, who've been working for the past, past 30 to 50 years, that are essentially, or a lot of them are starting to head into retirement years. And this is a big economic standpoint, a huge economic part of it too. And these people have been promised, right? They are the least sort of radical of the many generations. They have been, well, at least the large generations remaining. They are largely a product of the 60s. They are the survivors of the hippie culture, the ones that didn't die from drug overdoses, the ones who put on a suit and a tie and were promised a great leisurely retirement back in the 70s when things were plentiful, and 60s, I should say more the 60s, 70s were, had oil embargo and things like that. And who lived through the 80s and prosperity. But these, when that turns out to be a total hoax, and a lot of them are largely Republican, what's going to happen? And not just with them, what's going to happen to the already totally indebted millennial generation, which did you know the average net worth of a 30-year-old in the United States, if you include their debt, is something like negative $10,000 to $30,000.
That's not surprising at all.
And,
It
and,
depends
That's
on who
not
you.
surprising at all.
and let's
Depends on
talk
who you
also.
look at. It depends on who you look at, because I've even seen it up into the negative 57,000.
Well,
Well, yeah.
gentlemen, we're going to end this stream shortly, and I'm just going to go around the panel, and I'm going to ask to start. We're going to start with Job, and we're going to work counterclockwise. What is the one thing that you want to see those on the right, those who are Trump supporters, what should they do for at least the next year to 4 years, whether Trump wins or loses? We're gonna
As in
start
like
with Job.
normal people, or like establishment, or like people who are talk show hosts and
Nope.
stuff like that.
Everyday people.
Everyday people?
The 1 million MAGA marcher people.
Okay. If they haven't been doing so already, which we really should have been having this discussion in 2016, is right. We are headed to a massive precipice of uncertainty, and everybody can see it, and the obviousness of the severity of this is growing by every single day. People need to do three things. They need to, one, if they don't live in a high trust sort of local rural society, or at least aren't near one, you need to start networking with people nearby. Two, you need to get you need to have backup plans, things like extra food storages. You know how to hunt, know how to be self-sufficient. That's a big thing. I mean, self-sufficient for a given period of time, whether that be 2 weeks, 3 months, 1 year. The longer the better. And
what's number two?
And then also, well, that's the number one is, obviously be networked. Two is be prepared, and three is the three is really the could suffer immensely over the next 10 years or so. And things might be much better than I'm not saying go like full conspiracy and like mortgage your house and get a massive bunker. Although that, I don't know, if you have the money for that and don't have to mortgage a house, that'd be pretty. I wouldn't mind having that myself. But you got to get decentralized and network with people. Because if shit goes to hell, you want to survive that. You want to be able to network, and eventually, you and your friends might be able to work out with other friends. And if the worst thing happens, reestablish control in a sane of a territory, having control of the utilities and resources under people like us and you, the listener, who are sane, rational people that aren't that have the best interests of not only ourselves but also the constituents that we are under, right? Because this is not just a fight for us, right? The collapse of the global economic system, especially the United States supply chains, things like that, that's going to be devastating for a lot of people. And if it really, really gets bad, it could kill a lot of people. Much more. I mean, it's going to make coronavirus look like a hoax, or pretty much, or like a nothing, right? So
Indeed. So I like that response, Bebo. What should normal Americans who are part of the Million MAGA March, that demographic, what should we be doing for the next 1 to 4 years?
Same thing. We should be organizing and not like organizing like they have refused fascism, right? We need something similar like that, and we need to be able to get in the streets and on a dime, basically, when needed, like the left does, right? And we need to pull out numbers, and then I'll give 3 too, I guess, too. Second, we need to be more like it's thought of as the left as the wealthy and the Fortune 500 companies. I disagree. We need to get more involved in the economic side, like the social media. If we're not going to go protest them and try to take over. What we need to do is organize together and buy a bunch of shares of their company, right? Stuff like that. Fight that way, and then you know. What was my third? I absolutely forgot. But
Do you mind if I chip in just like a second on buying shares of the company?
No, we're just gonna go right on through, man. We're wrapping things up.
All right.
All right. So Spicy P, where are we at?
This is a hard one to say, and I hate saying it out loud. I've been
I feel
seeing, I've been seeing the trend, the examples all throughout history, and I don't think we can stop it. It's coming. It's just a matter of when. But war, man, I think it's just going to be prepare for war.
And
All
my
right.
third was, I forgot it, but was get back to Christian values.
Not just
All
that,
right.
but I did see something in the comments about what white Americans should do. It doesn't
Yeah.
fucking matter what color you are. It doesn't matter whatsoever. You could go ahead and talk to people. Usually in 5 minutes, people are like a book. You can figure out whether or not they're going to listen or if they're willing to hear you out. But we're at a point right now where people are so divided. Just prepare for war. Everything
Yeah.
that was said encompasses getting ready for war.
Yeah, it does. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to add. I'm just going to remind chat and everyone who listens to this that evil only wins when good men do nothing. And I'm glad to have had a president who did something for the last 4 years. So take the advice of those who have spoken before. Prepare yourselves. Get ready. And I'm going to simply add, start a family. One of the great strengths that we have as conservatives, as the right, is we are invested in our communities and we have children. We have values that we pass on to those who will outlive us. The left doesn't have that. That's why they're always zero. That's why they always lose in the end. They're incapable of perpetuating their own ideology because they don't breed. And really take to heart and learn those things about what makes a family strong. And really take that to heart. Have a family and build a family that's going to have values and a character that will last. And I'm going to close with that. Everyone stay carnal and God bless. Everyone say bye.
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 Stay safe.